Good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here, an honor to be amongst you and have this opportunity to discuss these important issues. Also very, very touching to participate in this session this morning. I think you would agree with me that we've already had an incredible opportunity this morning from Dr. Soros to Dr. Spalding to Dr. Akbar Ahmed sharing with us and addressing our important theme here in a most profound way. Let's express our appreciation for their contributions so far this morning. My task here in concluding this session, I'll be summarizing some of the things that we've been discussing. I'm going to use a PowerPoint here, so I need that. Thank you. Okay, so our theme today, America at a Crossroads, can we lead our nation to live up to its founding ideals? And we've certainly had lots of deep and insightful commentary on that subject already here this morning, to focus on those ideals and the importance of those ideals. We know that our nation faces serious challenges, and those challenges are of so many sorts and so significant, from the decline of morality in our nation, from the challenges facing the family and the breakdown of the family, from the challenges that face family formation and family stability within our nation. So, for example, the rise of children born out of wedlock. Now nearly 750,000 children are born every year out of wedlock. That's more than 4,000 children per day are born without a two-parent family. Every day, more than 2,000 marriages end in divorce every day in America. And we talk about the decline of morality. Just one statistic. We've heard over and over this morning a very, very important point about a notion of governing ourselves. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon, but just to think about the consequence of that. If you look around and see how much resources of our families and our societies are invested to protect ourselves from each other, it's staggering. So without going into the details, just to say that one estimate places the annual cost of crime in America at $675 billion in a year. So we have a crisis in family and the values within a family. We know that our families and individuals face economic challenges. I won't go into those details. Dr. Soros mentioned the important work that he's doing in helping families and individuals to live debt-free. But just to underscore the challenge we all know about our national debt, but just in terms of our own individuals, in terms of consumer debt in America, the average credit card debt is $15,000 per person. The average mortgage debt is over $150,000, and the average student loan debt is over $30,000. So we're a people that are actually a debtor nation, not only as a nation but also as individuals and families. And a significant challenge for us also is the fact that even though we are really a nation of people of faith, and a vast majority of our nation is people who describe a belief in God. In fact, what we find is that even though 87% of the population espouse to a belief in God, really only 1/3 of those people believe that we should live according to the principles of our faith. In other words, we have a disconnect between what we believe and how we live, right? The focus really needs for us to be, if we're going to govern ourselves, it's all about how we live. And so all of these just underscore the challenges that face us as a nation. And so if we're to think about this situation at a crossroads, America at a crossroads, then we have to think about this decision point. We heard even that the word crisis means making a decision. So how are we going to choose the way to go? And that's what this conference is about. That's what our discussions are about, because we have to begin by understanding how we arrived here, what can inform and thus can inform our decision forward. So I'd like to talk about a few basic points that summarize what we've been discussing today, distinctive qualities of America. The first is that America is based on an understanding that there is a divine basis for our rights and freedom. We are created equal and endowed by our Creator with rights. So Dr. Spalding spoke to that very, very clearly and very powerfully, right? And that is something extremely significant for us to recognize and understand, that the beginning point, the basis of our experiment together in this nation is the assertion that each and every human being is endowed by the Creator with rights, that those rights and responsibilities that we have are imbued in us, not by a decision of government, but by the very nature of who we are as created by God. That is a powerful, powerful beginning point for understanding the nation, the significance of what America is about. And so that inspiration that guided the founders of this nation, as we've heard this morning, is really a turning point in world history, in the development of humankind. It's an insight and an understanding that's not for America. It's for our journey together as human beings to understand how we can fulfill the potential endowed in us and live together in relationship with our Creator. Secondly, America's founding is completed when the dream is finally realized. We can say that America is a nation that is a work in process, work in progress. And so Dr. Soares mentioned that the insights of the founders exceeded the capacity of them to actually realize those, right? And we see over and over again that what is important about the American model and the American system and what we have in our nation is an opportunity to have an ideal for us to strive for, and the work for us to self-correct, to make adjustments along the way so that we can fulfill and realize that ideal. Our history is the story of that work. And the history of America is really like the human story. Because in the course of human history throughout our world, not only in this nation but everywhere, human beings have the capacity to glimpse and grasp the noble qualities of life and seek after those things. But also over and over and over again in the human story, our failures and shortcomings and challenges that are repeated over and over again. So America's history is that same history. We have glimpsed an ideal, and that ideal should be the vision that we strive to achieve, and we need to work together to realize that dream. From the founding of our nation to then milestones within the nation as we sought to correct the problems that we faced. We know that America began with a noble vision, but had some serious flaws in its application. A number of years ago, in an interview in a newspaper here in Washington, D.C., then Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, when asked about America's founding, said that America's founding vision was an incredible vision, but its application, in its application, America began with a birth defect. The birth of America began with a birth defect that had to be addressed, that had to be resolved, that had to be healed. And that kind of process is continuing. And so from the founding of our nation to the time of the Civil War and that transformation that took place in the incredible history there is a significant advance in our nation. I really value to be here in the Washington, D.C. area and see the monuments here. It's a moving experience to go to the Lincoln Memorial and to stand in that memorial and look to one side and the other, and to see the Gettysburg Address on one side and the second inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln on the other. And I urge you to read those if you haven't had a chance, because each of them are like sermons, really powerful messages in turning point in the history of our nation. That effort to continue to realize the dream as we know is an ongoing work. And so the civil rights movement and the work of Dr. Martin Luther King brought another turning point really within the lifetime of many of us. And just last year there was a celebration or marking of the 50th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. Right? America is a work in progress. And the important thing is that we keep clear that the ideal is what we are striving to achieve and realize. The third important point about America is that it is about shared principles and values, about self-evident truths. We heard that also today from our speakers. And this is really an important point for us to think about and consider. Right? Even that term, self-evident truths, is one that we need to ponder a bit. I was moved and touched to hear the story that was shared today about Levi Preston from Dr. Spaulding, right? Talking about self-government and talking about governing ourselves. It's about ideas and how they are guiding us. It's about principles and values. So when we consider the reality of America, the nature of America, then what is it that binds us together? What is it that makes us American? Is it our ethnic background? Is it our racial background? Is it our religious persuasion? No. Actually, within a society, then we have many kinds of different cultures and backgrounds in a diverse society like America. And if each of those is distinct within themselves, then we have we might say there's values of a particular religion or a particular culture. And so what is it that allows us to be bound together? What is the glue that can make us one nation under God? Well, it's our simple way of expressing this that we can think of it in this way. Society can have cohesion, can be bound together when there is general agreement on some basic points. Number one, general agreement about transcendent principles, that there are some principles that are important, central to the way life is meant to be lived. Dr. Spaulding described it as the founders described it, the laws of nature and of nature's God. Transcendent principles are not religious doctrines. They're truths about the nature of the universe, the laws of nature and of nature's God. And those principles then have to be put into practice. And that's what values are. Values are the application of principles in the ways in which we should live. If we have confusion about values, we need to go back to the principles and remind ourselves about the laws of nature and of nature's God, so that we can work together and see and have agreement on how we should apply those principles in the ways that we should live. And those shared values then are the basis of which we understand and agree upon standards of right and wrong and how we should live. So I'd like to share with you just a simple example here about this notion of a self-evident truth. That's a little bit hard for us to understand, I think, and I think if the famous Jay Leno Man on the Street interview asked a bunch of people, what's a self-evident truth, he might get some pretty funny answers, right? So what is a self-evident truth? Well, I believe that a self-evident truth is one that is simply obvious to everyone and does not require an argument to prove. That people naturally say, yes, that's right. Yeah. And so, as an example, I'd like to refer to an experience that we often have. Tragically in our world, there are sometimes terrible, terrible calamities, like the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. When those kinds of things happen, it actually calls forth the better qualities of who we are. Those kinds of disasters elicit amazing responses. In the United States, for example, there was an outpouring, unbelievable outpouring of contribution and aid. And when the news goes out that there's people buried in buildings in Haiti or wherever, then rescue crews mobilize and travel to that place. And likewise here, rescue crews went to Haiti and were digging through the rubble for days. The photo that we have here is from that earthquake in 2010. If you can see in the center of that photo is a little boy. His name is Kiki. He was actually rescued after, I think it was 4 or 5 days, buried in the rubble. And they were digging, and they found this boy. And honestly, he had been in the rubble for so long that when they got enough space to get him out, he wouldn't come out. He was too scared. They had to get his mother to come and call him out. But when he finally came out, he realized that he was free. Look at that boy. Now, how do you feel when you see that boy? And you think about that story, you think, great. Now look at the rescuer and look at his gesture, okay? I am pretty certain that's a rescuer from New York. In Haiti, they speak French. I'm pretty sure that rescue worker didn't speak the same language. He probably didn't have the same religion. But look at that human expression there, right? He's also, yes, right. Yes. And to me, this is the clearest expression of a self-evident truth. The value of every human life. Yes, sir. The value of every human life. I love this photo. I share this story a lot. I have never had anyone come up to me later and say, what a waste of time talking about that. No. People say, yes. Nobody comes up and says, well, what did it cost to send all those people there? Wait a minute, let's calculate that. Was that boy worth that? No. It's a self-evident truth, the value of that human life, and that Kiki is worth it. He's worth it. That's a self-evident truth. We need to do more work to understand the truths that that undergird our humanness, right? And then we need to work on ways in which we can make agreement on how we should live in this world together, right? In this diverse and pluralistic world. Consensus on values is what gives us the glue within our societies. It's what allows us to understand and connect to each other. I tell people all the time that in my neighborhood, it's like the United Nations. What allows me to relate to my neighbor as a neighbor is shared values. Simple things. I respect him, his family, his property, his well-being, and he the same to me. Therefore, I don't need a huge barrier between me and him. And when that sense of shared values erodes, then we simply, neighborhoods are no longer neighborhoods, right? They become places where the homes are co-located. Right. And so we need to get back to understanding how to make consensus on values within our society and world. Our nation, our original national anthem, motto was E pluribus unum, that's Latin, right? Out of many, one. Out of the many, one. How is it that we make one nation out of the many peoples that are living here? It's based on ideal, and it's based on an understanding of self-evident truths and the shared values that bind us together. It's our conviction that that is the way in which we become one nation under God. And finally, the principle of self-government. Mentioned here earlier, and very, very important notion. I just want to illustrate with an example from our founders. It's the notion that links faith, liberty, and virtue. And so one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence was Benjamin Rush, who said this: the only foundation for a republic is to be laid in religion. Without this, there can be no virtue, and without virtue, there can be no liberty. And liberty is the object and life of all republican governments. And so, since the time is running on and lunch is coming soon, let me just break this down for you real simply. because we consider this an important expression of the relationship between liberty and virtue and faith. Our nation, and really for all people as created by God and endowed by God with intrinsic value and freedom, is really the notion that we should govern ourselves. Right? To be truly free, we should govern ourselves. To govern myself requires that I actually have within myself an ethical framework. Right? I have to be a virtuous person to govern myself, right? To live rightly. And so liberty, to be truly free, requires virtue. How is it that I become a virtuous person? Actually, I have to have that virtue instilled in me in the ways in which I'm raised within my family. And where do our families find the basis of that way of life? Almost always it comes from an ethical system, most commonly rooted in a faith tradition. Not one particular faith tradition, but the great faith traditions of our world instill basic human values that connect us to the noble qualities of the human spirit. Liberty requires virtue, and virtue requires faith, a connectedness to a source of truth, of principles and values. And so these elements of the American model are what are the essence of our nation. John Adams said this: our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And so our challenge is how we bring focus to these things. If America is about ideals, if what binds us together is a commitment to a common vision, we have to remember the vision. We have to honor the vision. We have to seek to constantly realize and substantiate what that means in the ways in which we live. America began with a vision, the American dream. It's about ideas, the self-evident truths, and transcendent principles. There are shared principles that are the glue that binds us together. We must continue to do the work, and indeed it is work, to keep the dream alive and make it real. If this is the essence of who we are, we have to make that present and center of how we connect with and relate with and engage with each other. We need to bring focus on principles as the central basis of how we can find guidance in our decisions together. And we have to build consensus on values. I believe this afternoon that we'll have more opportunity to delve in more detail to these important discussions, and hope that we can conclude together that we make a strong commitment to take action, to work together, so that our founding vision and ideals can be a clear guiding light to the way forward for our nation. Thank you very much.